This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 46 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, and here to offer an every-person viewpoint to our podcast. We are both here because we believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are to make difficult end-of-life decisions.
So welcome to this week's show. Please relax, get yourself a cup of hot chocolate and a slice of toast. Maybe put a little cinnamon or peanut butter on it. And thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about snow-related deaths. Like the BBC, we see our show as offering entertainment, enlightenment, and education, and divide that into three halves to address each of these goals. Our main topic is in the second half, so feel free to fast forward to that yak-free zone. In the first half, Charlie has our recipe of the week and a story about notable people who died without a will. In the second half, I'm going to update you about the dangers in snow shoveling. And in the third half, Tom Hartman, our roving film reviewer, joins us for his review of the film His Three Daughters. So did you survive the snow, Charles?
Snow. There was some snow here in New York.
I thought you got like 2 feet of snow.
No.
Oh.
No,
wrong Charlie. Sorry.
That band of snow. We were not on the edge of it, but it was close to us. But no, we did not get the brunt of that at all.
Oh.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of snow, but that was it.
Well, we got in freaking Oklahoma 8 inches of snow.
Jeepers! Wow.
I have never I've been here since 2005. Never seen that much snow here. It was exciting. And it was that good cold snow, that good crunchy Michigan snow.
Yes.
It was nice. Dogs had fun.
I know. I don't remember snow. There hasn't been a tremendous amount of snow here in several years. But I remember when I would visit here, and when I first moved here, you could always rely on 2 huge snowstorms. And some of them would shut the city down. And vehicles would not be allowed. But of course, this being New York, people would ignore that. No more. I haven't seen any amount of snow like that in years now, which is too bad. In our first half, the Everyone Dies road trip has us in Texas this week. Texas is the chili con carne capital of the world, and the place where the frozen margarita machine was invented. So, you would think our Texas recipe would be one of those 2 food groups. But no, we like to walk on the wild side. Instead, we have Texas trash pie. Texas trash pie is made with many common baking ingredients and snack food items. Your chocolate chips, your pretzels, your graham crackers, shredded coconut, pecan pieces, butter, condensed milk, and caramel bits. This pie will be a great hit at your funeral lunch. Bon appetit! Now, what do Picasso, Jimi Hendrix, Abraham Lincoln, and Princess Diana have in common with the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin? Yes, they're all dead, but also they all died without a will or without updating their will. Most left behind a fortune, but too often millions, sometimes millions and millions of dollars were wasted on lawyers, avoidable taxes, and debates on traditional versus frozen margaritas. Some examples. Musician, writer, and singer Prince died in 2016, aged 57, leaving a $156 million estate in limbo for 6 years. The Associated Press reported that more than 45 people came forward as potential heirs to his estate, many claiming to be a wife, child, sibling, or other relative, including an inmate who falsely claimed to be Prince's son. Artist Pablo Picasso, 91, left an estate worth between $100 million and $250 million in 1973 money. He left behind thousands of paintings and other works of art, wives, children, and multiple mistresses, eventually racking up a $30 million legal bill because he never made a will. Billionaire entrepreneur, engineer, investor, filmmaker, and philanthropist Howard Hughes died, age 70, in 1976 without a will, with an estate conservatively estimated to be worth $2.5 billion, which is roughly $13.86 billion in 2025. He had no immediate family, and claimants came out of the woodwork. After 34 years, the courts eventually named 200 of Hughes's distant relatives as heirs. Hughes's? Hughes's or Hughes's? Marianne?
Hughes's.
Hughes's. Okay, very good. We don't want to get sued. Diana Spencer, Princess of Wales, died without a will. Kinda. The princess had a valid will, but she died in a 1997 car crash. But because she did not update her will to bequeath her godchildren a quarter of her approximately $31.5 million estate, her mother and sister were allowed to overrule her wishes. Personal property items that should have gone to her sons, Princes William and Harry, were instead put on public display and eventually even used for profit by her brother. All right, so lesson learned. Make a will. Now, what happens if your executor cannot find your will? Over 52% of people don't know where mom and dad stored their estate planning documents. Estate planning documents must be kept in a secure but easily accessible place, and your family should know where that is. In our show notes, we have a link to a guide as to how to write your will. Remember, don't create a mess for your family, partners, and pets. Yes, pets. Write your will. Don't leave Earth without it. Please go to our webpage for this week's recipe for Texas trash pie, or as we say in Brooklyn, yo, give it to Mikey. He likes everything. And additional resources for this program. Everyone Dies is offered at no cost, but is not free to produce. Please contribute what you can. Your tax-deductible gift will go directly to supporting our nonprofit journalism so that we can remain accessible to everyone. You can also donate at www.everyonedies.org. That's dies.org, or at our site on Patreon, www.patreon.com, and search for Everyone Dies. Marianne?
Thanks, Charlie. Well, it's that time of year. The weather is cold and major snowstorms are happening. And while they're beautiful to watch if you can stay home, they can turn deadly. Driving is hazardous, and multi-car pile-up wrecks are vehicles and cause accident-related deaths. Also, being stuck in your car without the proper clothing to keep you warm can have deadly results. Given that our skin is 64% water, if we go outside in freezing weather, our skin and other tissues under our skin can freeze. Your fingers and toes are also more prone to frostbite because those areas will have reduced blood flow and cold temperatures as your body tries to keep its core warm. I've seen frostbite fingers and toes, and really, Charlie, they look like shriveled black bananas. Like when I see them, in the sale rack at the grocery store.
Yeah, I've seen pictures.
That's just what they look like. So we think to ourselves, I'm just running out to the mailbox. I can wear my slippers and my sweater. And then if you slip, fall, and no one's around, you can get frostbite, lose a limb, or even die. Having health conditions that cause poor circulation, such as diabetes, Raynaud's phenomenon, peripheral artery disease, and peripheral neuropathy, or are taking beta blockers, all put you at risk for frostbite. And anyone can get frostbite. But babies and young children are at a high risk because they can't always communicate their symptoms and easily lose heat through their skin. So water freezes at 32 degrees. So if it's colder than that, wear hats, scarves, gloves, a warm coat, boots if you go outside. I put some good references in the show notes about frostbite if you want to learn more. Now, the snow also demands to be played in, and some people go skiing or snowboarding. I mean, I don't do that anymore, but some people do it. The most recent statistics are from 2020, and they document that more than 23,500 deaths were caused by skiing accidents globally, which was a 19% increase from the previous year. In Europe, the number of deaths increased by almost 24%, and in North America, it increased by more than 21%. In any given year, there's an average of 80 ski and snowboarding-related deaths in the United States. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but because it's a recreational activity, maybe that's 80 too many. The majority of ski-related deaths, about 93%, were male skiers on terrain listed as more difficult at the time of the accident. Of these skiers' deaths, 79% of them were wearing helmets, but they still died due to their injuries. The most common cause of death from skiing and snowboarding is a traumatic brain injury. This usually occurs when a skier hits their head on an obstacle at high speed. Even when wearing a helmet, severe blows to the head can be deadly. And most of the brain injuries that occur on the ski slopes result from skiers skiing at high speeds and losing control. If you go too fast and lose your edging, you can spin and slide uncontrolled into any obstacle that might be in your way. Or as novelist Dave Barry says, skiing combines outdoor fun with knocking down trees with your face. But the slow-related death I want to delve into today is snow shoveling, heart attacks, and deaths. Now, heart disease is the leading cause of death for men, women, and people of most racial and ethnic groups. The average age of the first heart attack was 65.6 years for males and 72 years for females. In 2021, about 805,000 people in the U.S. had a heart attack, and about 20,114 of those died from it. Now, shoveling snow can cause a heart attack. A study by Auger and colleagues documented that compared to no snowfall, a heavy snow of 7 to 8 inches was linked to a 16% higher odds of men being admitted to the hospital with heart attacks, and a 34% increase of those people dying from a heart attack. Now, you might be wondering, why does this happen? Well, let me tell you. Cold weather causes vasoconstriction, which is when the blood vessels tighten. Tightening up is constriction. And they get smaller, which makes our blood pressure go up. Too much exertion, especially when you're not used to strenuous exercise that occurs too quickly, can trigger a heart attack, especially in the cold. The medical name for a heart attack is a myocardial infarction, which is an extended stoppage of blood flow to a part of the heart. Cardiac arrest occurs when blood flow completely stops due to an abnormal heart rhythm. A review of cardiac events in Japan found heart attacks and sudden cardiac deaths were significantly more likely to occur on the toilet and during sport heavy work than at any other time. Other studies have documented that the most common activity people are doing before a heart attack is engaging in sudden and strenuous physical exertion, like heavy lifting, climbing stairs rapidly, or starting a vigorous exercise routine without proper warm-up. These activities can put a sudden strain on the heart and trigger a heart attack. So how does that happen? Well, when we bear down and push to have a bowel movement, or when we lift a heavy shovel full of snow, we hold our breath. Straining and holding our breath at the same time is known as a Valsalva Maneuver. The Valsalva Maneuver was first mentioned in 1704 in the works of Antonio Maria Valsalva, who was an Italian physician. Now, personally, I always wondered where the name Valsalva Maneuver came from, so I feel so much better now that I know. This combination can activate the vagus nerve in your chest, which signals the brain to change your heart rate. Blood empties a little from the larger veins and lungs. This causes the person's blood pressure to rise. Under these conditions, studies have shown that the systolic pressures, that's the top number, as high as 311, about 2.5 times normal. Now, this rise in blood pressure means that less blood is being returned to the heart. This causes a drop in blood pressure. There are these things called baroreceptors in the heart. These are sensors that help keep your blood pressure normal. Their job is just to say, oh my God, it's dropping. We have to constrict and make the blood pressure go up, or vice versa. So these baroreceptors notice these changes in pressure, become active, and put the body into a state called vagal withdrawal. This resets the heart's output by increasing the heart rate and narrowing the blood vessels, which means that blood pressure returns to normal. And this all happens like automatically within seconds. So then when the person stops bearing down, releases their breath, the blood vessels in their lungs open up, the blood pressure again drops suddenly. Then blood flow to the heart causes the blood pressure to rise again. This is because the resetting of the blood flow to the heart causes a response in the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight part of your nervous system that responds when we are stressed or threatened. This stimulates the baroreflex, the reflex in the heart that responds to pressure changes, causes the heart rate to slow and blood pressure to return to normal. So within holding your breath, bearing down, let's say to have a bowel movement, or within holding your breath, picking up a heavy thing of snow and dumping it, in that amount of time, your blood pressure is going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. And it's this rushing of the blood pressure and the rush of the blood to the heart that is that Valsalva maneuver. So a person with good heart health can survive all the phases of the Valsalva maneuver. But in the case of heart disease, prior heart attacks, or poor heart health can put you in a potentially dangerous situation if you decide to shovel snow or bear down during a bowel movement. Symptoms of a heart attack are chest pain, trouble breathing, or pain that radiates down the arm or into the neck. And you find that you're getting more tired easily, feeling like a cold sweat is coming on, or feeling lightheaded. These are reasons to stop and seek medical attention right away. And I kind of laugh because who stops shoveling snow just because they have a little chest pain? Well, you should, because that's dangerous. Now, my very first job when I graduated from nursing school in 1978 was on a cardiac floor at Harper Hospital in Detroit. And so we had, the post-cardiac ICU patients come for their heart attack rehab. And one of the things we always did was put them on a stool softener. Why? Because we didn't want them to strain down to have a bowel movement. Because we wanted to prevent them from activating that Valsalva maneuver. So if you've had a history of heart disease, talk to your doctor. You could be on a stool softener, not a stool stimulant, but just a plain Colace to keep your stool nice and soft so that you're not bearing down. And you should not be shoveling snow. Hire a kid if you can find one. Hire a service. Get your grandkids. But you could be putting your life in danger going out there and shoveling that snow. Be sure not to hold your breath when you lift your shovel. Be aware to breathe through your mouth. So we would always teach in cardiac rehab, we'd say to people, if you're having trouble with a bowel movement, open your mouth and breathe. Because with your mouth open, you can't hold your breath. And then you can't activate that Valsalva maneuver. If you're shoveling snow, don't push yourself. Stay hydrated and warm, and pay attention to how you're feeling. Snow shoveling's hard work. If you have a history of heart attack or prior heart attacks, have someone else do this for you. It's really not worth the risk. If you have trouble breathing or chest pain while shoveling, call 911 immediately and seek medical care. And if you live in a snowy area, stay up to date on your CPR certification. Someone you love may need your help. So stay safe in the winter wonderland. Charlie, any questions about that?
Gosh, Marianne, I don't know what to say to that. But yeah, I'm just thinking about Elvis Presley on the toilet.
We should do a segment on. We should have thought of that for the first half of famous people who've died on the toilet.
Oh. A subsection, yes, absolutely. Wasn't there some king also who? So we have toilet deaths, and then just also what you had mentioned about, skiing and running into some pesky tree. I remember Sonny Bono, and didn't that happen to one of the Kennedys?
Yeah,
also?
one of the Kennedy boys died that way.
Oh, jeepers! Yeah.
And it's what I found was really interesting in during the research is it's not, like the people who are, snow plowing. That's when the tips of your skis are, pointed in and you're going really slow.
Yeah.
They might cause accidents, but they're not the ones who are running into trees. It's, the hot doggers who want to go down the hill as fast as they possibly can. And, there's some people who, will drink and ski or, smoke pot and ski.
Right, yeah.
And that's not a good combination either because, it's disinhibiting and you say, I can remember skiing once. I don't know if I was in Michigan or New England, and I took a turn and I hit into a black diamond slope, and I said, I'm not doing this, and I backed my way up so I got back on the right trail. But I'm a woman and I'm cautious and I'm not a great skier, so I was like, I'm not going to take that risk.
Exactly.
But you can see somebody else saying, "Oh, black diamond, how'd I get here? Well, let's see what happens here." My daughter went skiing once, and I have one daughter who's very athletic and one daughter who is like me. And so she goes skiing, and I get this text from her as she's laying in, the red carts that the ski patrol carries you down the mountain. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? And I don't know if she had twisted her knee or twisted her ankle, but she's just like another me,
Mm-hmm.
We can't do anything without hurting ourselves. So stay safe out there.
So with heavy exertion, like you said, you're shoveling and lifting, more than you should, exertion like that. I'm asking for a friend. If one exerts oneself sexually a lot, could that happen? Oh, wait a minute. Yes, it can. I just remembered Nelson Rockefeller. That's how he shuffled off his mortal coil.
So with that, if you're holding the thing with the Valsalva maneuver is it requires you to hold your breath.
Yeah.
And sort of lift or bear down. So if that is part of your magic Navarrete move, then you might be in trouble. But people do have heart attacks having sex, and just from the strenuousness of it. if you have started a sex life. And so we would tell people that if you could climb 2 flights of stairs without becoming short of breath, then your heart is good enough to have sex. So
An important safety tip.
that's,
Thank you.
yes, yes. And we do not want to hear about the Navarrete signature moves.
I guess. Well,
No.
what is it? What is it?
No.
Well, never mind. All right, fine. Our third half is a film review of His Three Daughters, a 2023 American drama written and directed by Azazel Jacobs. The film stars Carrie Coon, Natasha Lyonne, and Elizabeth Olsen as 3 estranged sisters who come back together to care for their dying father, played by J.O. Sanders.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm here with Tom Hartman, who is reviewing Netflix film about 3 sisters who come together in their father's New York City apartment to keep vigil during the last few days of their dad's life. Welcome, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Marianne. This movie, I loved it, and let me tell you why.
Okay.
Natasha Lyonne, who starred in that Russian Doll series, lives with her dying father. She has been living with the old man. And into her home, all of a sudden, people start coming in, both hospice staff and her older half-sisters from her father's previous marriage. And these 2 women, the oldest one is played by Carrie Coons, who has the lead in The Gilded Age, and Elizabeth Olsen from, the Olsen twins. It was some surprise casting. But this movie is like a delicate little chamber piece with fully fleshed out characters who speak beautiful dialogue in a plot that gingerly unwraps these women's vulnerabilities. Coons is the high-strung, control-freak older sister, and Olsen is a peacemaking middle sister, and Lyonne is the stoner younger sister whose insouciant attitude masks very deep feelings. I think that movie did an excellent job of showing how death throws a family system out of whack. These women are forced to start treating each other differently, and their shared grief brings them to a place where they embark on a closer, more loving relationship. The writer and director, Azazel Jacobs, he keeps his camera trained on the actresses' faces. There's nary a long shot in the movie, and these 3 actresses rise to the occasion. Natasha Lyonne, in particular, is a revelation. She's a comedian, and her performance here is as eye-opening as Mary Tyler Moore's in Ordinary People. She has been racking up awards on the festival circuses here, and I wouldn't be surprised if she gets an Oscar nod. The male roles are small, but there's 2 of male characters that really stand out. And the first one is played by Jovan Adepo, and he plays Lyonne's boyfriend. And at one point, he has this monologue where he speaks up for her because she won't speak up herself. And he pulls these 2 older sisters up short and marks a turning point in their relationship. And then the other is the father himself. He has a speech towards the end that just ripped my heart out. Another thing that really made this movie was the music. A very quiet piano-based score. And it ended with that song at the end. It was like the perfect segue from their world back into mine. And while the movie moved me to tears and left me feeling sad, it also left me feeling like the director and the actresses treated me like an adult who's capable of understanding the subtleties of the story. Between the screenplay, the performances, and the music, this should not be missed.
I agree.
That's all I have to say.
I like from the very beginning, you're drawn into this because you know these sisters. They're your sisters. They're all the sisters you've probably ever seen in difficult situations. And I thought the older sister, when she's going on about this is what we, when she's kind of like lays out, here's how it's going to be. This is what we have to do for Dad. And everything that she says, that has to be for Dad. And, they have to get along and they have to do this. It reminded me of, remember in Man of La Mancha, there's the sisters are talking to the priest. And they're saying, I'm only thinking of him. It's that song. I'm only thinking of him. And that's what that reminded me of. It's like, this has nothing to do with him. This is all has to do with you and what you need at this point. But she's not able to say, I need this. Did you
yes.
You know that part I'm talking about?
Yes. And, there's no villain in this. I mean, she's this control freak, but you feel for her because she's not only trying to manage what's going on with her sisters and her father, she's like trying to manage what's going on with her home, with her husband and kids. It's like, oh, the poor woman. You really get that she's like under a lot of stress, and it's all because of her. She put herself in a lot of that stress.
Yeah. Because of how she copes and how she lives her life. I thought it was also interesting, like, I watch these films and I make my husband crazy with comments about they wouldn't do that in hospice. They wouldn't do that in hospice, like that. Throughout the whole thing, they have him on an IV with some sort of heart monitor so that you really don't see Dad until the end, but you hear the beep, beep, beep all throughout. It's always there. When the girls are in the living room talking, when they're eating, whatever's going on, you're hearing that beep, beep, beep. And artistically, I understand what they're doing with that. But in hospice, we deliberately shut things like that off because the family will sit and watch the monitor and pay attention to the monitor rather than kind of focusing on the person who's in the bed. So in hospice, we don't need to know all of that information anyway. So all those machines are off. Don't hydrate people artificially in the last days of life like that. So, the IV and all of that is not necessary. So there were a lot of things those kinds of things that distracted me. But I also thought the hospice worker who has, instead of directly saying, don't call 911 because they'll come in and want to resuscitate him when the oldest daughter is sort of obsessing that there's no DNR, or when he talks about giving him morphine and that, he's not saying it's okay to just increase the morphine on their own, but he's sort of saying that. I thought that kind of meta communication was really interesting instead of just coming out and saying what he was really wanting to say. Did you have any thoughts about that? Did you notice that? Or was it just me?
No, that came across. It came across as really believable, And the nurse, she has a very small role, but boy, was she good at setting boundaries. When those women got snippy with her, it's like she gave it right back. Yeah. The whole movie, I thought, was just very well written.
Mm-hmm.
And in an age where like everything is superheroes. It's nice to see a movie that like takes place on Earth and it's full of people that like I know. I've met these kind of people in my life.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also a good model in terms of saying, I liked how that went or I didn't like how that went. So that if you're in that situation or when you're in that situation, you can think and say, I don't want to do it that way. I want to have it different. If we can make it different or not is another story, but it might be something that we want. One of the other things that I thought was really profound and really stuck out to me was the very ending. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but just to say that, there are things that we want to say to people. And we don't always say them, especially with our kids. As a mother, there are things that I find as I get older that I really want to tell them. And I try to tell them, but you get the sense, or I get the sense that they don't really want to take the time to listen to it. And in this film, they take the time to listen to it at the very end. He wants to say things, but he hasn't said them all along. And it left me with this feeling of, we want to tell things, but are people really wanting to hear that stuff before they feel that the time has run out and they can't, that this is their last chance to hear it? Do you know what I'm saying, Tom?
Yes, I do. Although, I got a sort of a different idea of what happened at the end. And we'd have to give away spoilers to talk about it. But I get what you're saying, because it's not only, they don't not only take the time to hear it, but they don't get why this person all of a sudden thinks it's very important to say all this stuff that they haven't.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe part of the message of the film, or part of the message for our listeners, is that sometimes a person in your life wants to tell you something and you don't think it's relevant, or you don't think you have the time to hear it, but maybe we need to kind of force ourselves to be there with them and listen to it, because it's just something that they want to tell you. They want you to know. You think, well, is this really relevant? I mean, what does this mean for me? But, it's not all about you. And maybe they just want this piece to be known.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any final thoughts, Tom?
No. Hopefully your listeners will enjoy this as much as we did.
Well, I think that especially if they have the Netflix subscription, I think that they will. And, that you've got me 2 for 2 on these films that I don't know that, I probably would have eventually gotten to them, but I love that you bring these films to me to say, hey, this is something you have to watch, and for our listeners to get another perspective. So thank you, Tom.
Oh, you're welcome, Marianne. And, the next time I see one like this, I'll give you a call again.
Excellent. We count on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your review. That's it for this week's episode. Please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies, and thank you for listening. This is Charlie Navarrete. Remember, don't forget you're going to die.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, breathe. Do not hold your breath at the same time. And every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.